Hey, it's Corn. So today, I'll be reviewing The Flowers of Buffoonery by Osamu Dazai. So, to be preemptive about this, I didn't really like it. It was kind of meh. I think a lot of my opinions from it stem from the kind of interplay between the characters as well as the interruptions by Dazai himself throughout the book, specifically concerning his great wealth of knowledge on how deprecating he is on himself. And I think that that kind of, in my opinion, was an interruption to kind of the story that he was trying to tell, the kind of messages that he was trying to portray in the follies of youth, the youthful vigor that these young men hold throughout the story. But overall, I think that it's a good kind of preemptive idea of where Dazai is coming from going into No Longer Human, which is the sequel to this, which this is meant to be the prequel. So I think that overall it's a good message for what the book can be and what the future books hold, because it kind of gives you an idea of where Dazai is coming from with his self-deprecating humor, the character flaws, some of the things that Yozo, the main character, has going for him as a person. But, I mean, overall, the series is not bad, specifically concerning Flowers of Buffoonery as well as No Longer Human. Because I read No Longer Human first, probably about a year ago now. This I read maybe 2 months ago now. And No Longer Human portrayed a much deeper message, in my opinion, of the idea of self-hatred and the idea of coming to terms with oneself and not feeling as if you are recognized as somebody in our society and somebody who's rejected by all of his friends and family, even though maybe you're not, but you feel rejected because you don't feel the same kind of emotions that you see other people feeling. And so this novel coming in with the interjections by Dazai, with the short kind of sweet narrative on Yozo's life in the sanatorium, spoilers ahead obviously for Flowers of Buffoonery by Dazai, but Yozo, the main character, attempts suicide and ends up in a sanatorium. And while he's in the sanatorium, the story goes on to kind of describe his life with all of his friends coming to visit him, the girls down the hallway who routinely are a subject of interest for Yozo and his friends, and a lot of just kind of the police officers that come and visit. And the novel ends, in my opinion, on kind of a sweet note of that they're on this field, and it's kind of the preemptive setting for No Longer Human. And overall, the book plays well with the idea of not feeling right in a certain situation with friends. Throughout the novel, it's a lot of Yozo being kind of outcasted or feeling outcasted and not knowing his place within the world. And when you finally get to the end and you finally get to this scene where it's this grandiose, like, we're at the end of the book and Dazai writes Yozo as not in a happy place, I suppose. And it feels as if it drops off the cliff that they're standing on, because the field that they're standing on is kind of this field, and then it drops off onto a cliff. And it feels as if you jump from the cliff, and the end of the novel kind of comes to a halt as if somebody were to jump off. And I think that it's a really good precursor into No Longer Human, into Dazai's other work, because it kind of shows Dazai as Dazai. It's not just some omniscient narrator that exists within the sphere of influence on the book. It's as if he just exists to tell the story, but doesn't feel comfortable in telling the story completely, fully, and correctly. And I think that overall, the book is worth a read if you plan to read No Longer Human by Dazai later on, but to be preemptive in the series isn't really necessary. To kind of come in with this book isn't necessary. You could start with No Longer Human, read The Setting Sun, read Schoolgirl, and then come back to this and read this, which is pretty much what I did in my exploration of Dazai. Obviously, it would be good to read the prequel book before going into No Longer Human so that you have an idea of where Yozo comes from as a person. But personally, I enjoyed No Longer Human in a greater sense. I enjoyed the messages that No Longer Human meant to portray more. And although this book is good for a precursor to that series to see where Dazai comes from, it's not necessary. And you can definitely get the messages of No Longer Human in No Longer Human itself and not come in with Flowers of Buffoonery. With that said, though, after reading No Longer Human, a great second book is The Setting Sun, because you see Dazai and you see Yozo as Dazai, almost as an autobiography, and then you go into The Setting Sun with No Longer Human still in your mind, and you can see where Dazai comes from with the fall of traditional Japan, and you can come in and you can really kind of see where Dazai's coming from, I suppose. And so a great way to read these is to see it from Dazai's perspective, and in that sense, The Flowers of Buffoonery does a great job. So it's 50-50 on story versus seeing where Dazai comes from, because I think that if you're trying to see this as who is the author that ends up writing all of these great books, it's a really good book to start for that reason. But in order to come in for the story, which is kind of what I did, in order to come in for the story as if you were going in No Longer Human or The Setting Sun, or even Schoolgirl for that matter, even though Schoolgirl is more of a stream of consciousness, coming into this with the idea of, I'm going to know what Dazai is like coming out of this, is a better way to approach this novel specifically. So that's all I have. Thanks for coming and talking with me. If you want to see more corner reviews, just let me know, and I'll see you later.